speaking of much respect, we're going to talk about Dr. Jimothy Concepts now, Conceptual James, and how unhinged he's become.
So you might be wondering why critical social justice activists always use the word folks to describe people. Brown folks, black folks, white folks, queer folks. There are a lot of reasons that they use the word folks. It depends on where you're looking. The queer theorists, for example, use the word folks so they can have a gender-neutral alternative to hey guys or ladies and gentlemen, something like that.
Okay, true. Where will he go with this? Okay, maybe. I mean, folks is gender neutral. Let's see.
But there's a deeper reason as well, and you see that especially in critical race theory. Critical race theory looks back to a black scholar from the very early 20th century, late 19th century, named W.E.B. Du Bois. And Du Bois went to Germany, and he studied there with Gustav von Schmoller, who was a scholar particularly of another German philosopher called Herder, who was a great nationalist and believed in folk national identities.
What?
So when they say brown folks,
oh, he's saying folks is actually folkish. Like he's saying, you know, folks like Nazis. Actually, that's where it comes from. Yeah, that's right, folks. Yeah, when I say folks, howdy partner, I'm actually being I'm saying it because, you know, I'm thinking about how the folk like in Nazi Germany. That's awesome. Dude, this guy needs more money. I love that.
What they're trying to do is put those groups into a kind of a nationalistic type identity that's rooted in their race.
Wait, I don't understand. Don't you think that that's like, who is closely aligned with Nazi ideals? Famous black scholar W.E. Du Bois or fucking Conceptual James, who literally works for Republican think tanks and does fascist agitprop regularly? Also, it is Du Bois, technically. That's how you would normally read it, right? Am I wrong? Like, in America, you read it as Du Bois, but gave up the French pronunciation to emphasize his blackness. I'm wrong, like, in the sense that, like, he didn't use it that way, but not wrong to assume that it would be Du Bois, because it's literally, that's how French last name, and that's how you're supposed to read it. How the fuck did we get caught up in this while there's a man on your screen, Conceptual James, literally saying that a famous black communist scholar, author, was actually influenced by communism or influenced by Nazism, and that also that somehow it relates back to saying folks.
So it's really the same kind of thinking that led to, you know, the folkish with the V in German thought of Germany, leading especially up to the 1930s and the disaster going forward from there. What was it there? Ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer, right? That same folk. Exactly the same folk with the exact same lineage.
Is this even etymologically accurate? No, dude. What? No, of course not. What? Unless you think like all the entirety of German language is just built after Nazi Germany or something. And like German language did not exist before Nazi Germany. Folk just means folks, means people. This is a complete psychotic. I mean, this is like the ramblings of a madman.
Right, that same folk. Exactly the same folk with the exact same lineage.
Dog, he's just describing how the German language works right now. It's awesome, though, because, like, we're winning elections by saying, actually, it's the woke people that were Nazis. That's how we're going to win, by fucking saying, actually, it's the woke people that are the real Nazis, to a group of people who are literally like, no, we like Nazi stuff. What the fuck? The woke level insists it's just a benign gender-neutral way of saying, you guys, the truth is it's a plot to foment Hitlerian racial nationalism going all the way back to W.E.B. Du Bois. Conceptual Jimbo on critical race theory. You might think CRT is just a body of scholarship investigating racist social systems and institutions, but actually it's a scheme developed by that Jew at the Frankfurt School to use black people as puppets for global communism. He literally goes on from saying that like the woke left are the real Nazis to just repeating Nazi propaganda, which is awesome.
So what is critical race theory?
Like, this is Nazi propaganda. The Frankfurt School was like, you know, creating these sorts of woke attitudes to destroy Western civilization, which is superior inherently, is 1,000,000% Nazi propaganda.
And I can tell you what critical race theory is. They say we can't define it. Well, let's break it down. Let's define it. Critical race theory is a movement in scholarship, activism, and especially law and getting into education and other fields that's designed to reconsider the relationship between race, racism, and power. To be more frank about it, it is the belief that the fundamental organizing principle of society is racism, and that this racism was created by white people specifically to oppress people of other races, and that they maintain that racism so that they can maintain their own advantage in society. That's what critical race theory is all about. We could also say that it's a neo-Marxist strategy to make use of racial minorities to try to make way for a cultural revolution in America, just like Herbert Marcuse.
Wait, I don't understand. Like, wait. Before we get into that part, like he's saying what? Like critical race theory is
frank about it. It is the belief that the fundamental organizing principle of society is racism, and that this racism was created by white people specifically to oppress people of other races.
I mean, he's right. That's right. He's spitting. Why is he spitting so hard? I don't understand why. Like, are we supposed to infer that what he is saying is actually bad because he's saying it in an angry tone? Is that what it is?
And that they maintain that racism so that they can maintain their own advantage in society.
I mean, it's not wrong. He's not telling us why that's incorrect. I don't get it. I mean, the organizing principle is still around capital, and obviously racism has been used, or white supremacy specifically has been used as a vehicle to generate more of that while creating a permanent underclass that also you can use as a divider between the white working class and black or brown working class that causes the indentured servants to let go of their own personal subjugation, so they specifically look down at another group of individuals. There's a multitude of different ways that you can take advantage of this. Yeah, it's the concept of race and what you do with race and the racial differences, the racial disparities, absolutely was created as a political tool to justify slavery. Because if you were to realize that like these are human beings and not just property or not just animals in the way that these racist people, these white supremacist people advocated for them to be seen, you would be like, what the fuck? We need to immediately abolish this shit. This is psychotic. But yeah, that's where it comes from. And that purity politics also comes from, like, whiteness as a concept also comes from that, because it's about your whiteness is your proximity to blackness. Your whiteness is a political tool crafted specifically to enforce or reinforce your dominance. Only by how far away you are from being black, i.e. the one drop rule.
We could also say that it's a neo-Marxist strategy to make use of racial minorities to try to make way for a cultural revolution in America, just like Herbert Marcuse wrote in 1969 in his so-called Essay on Liberation. So that's another thing that critical race theory actually is. It is the attempt to use race to break open America for a communist-style revolution based now in equity rather than in pure communism.
I love this idea, though, because it's like this is, without any sort of organizational tools, without any sort of labor militancy or even unions in general, like how the fuck would that ever happen? Like his attitude, unironically, I think this person has read too many books. Okay, I've said this about Conceptual James before. He strikes me as the kind of guy who unfortunately did too much reading. And what I mean by that is like, he literally sounds like an ANCOM fucking endlessly posturing and fantasizing about like a post-revolutionary communist society and how you would become a poetry writer in that situation. You know what I mean? He's like so brain broken that he thinks that like this is even remotely, that we are even remotely capable, like that there are material conditions that are ripe for such revolutionary activity. You know what I mean? Guys saying liberal party wants a communist revolution. Yeah, I mean, he's not as palatable to normal people. Yeah, exactly. Because of how much he's read and how fucking annoying and brain broken he is, by the way, he is not going to be able to, get this across to anyone, get his message across to anyone. The real guy you got to worry about is like Chris Rufo. That motherfucker is a demon, okay? This guy, too much of just a fucking brain broken debate lord.
So critical race theory is pretty easy to understand. It's a belief system that believes that the ordinary state of affairs in our society is racism, that racism hides itself rather than gets better, has permanence to it.
I mean, it's true. Like everything he's just saying about critical race theory is literally true. And then he turned around and he's like, it's actually wrong because some, Jewish professor came up with it. That's a little sussy, man. How am I supposed to understand that this is a bad thing? Other than the fact that the only thing that you associated it with was, again, some professor came up with it.
Another way to put that is it's maybe the best parts of communism and the best parts of racism, two terrible, terrible ideas mixed together to break America.
Dude, why is he frothing? He's been saying this for over a year now. He says it all the time. He frequently claims we live in Herbert Marcuse's world. James Lindsay's wholesale adoption of the Frankfurt School conspiracy theory, as well as his complete misreadings of Marcuse, which was then taken up by Rufo, have been instrumental in rekindling the embers of this conspiracy theory. The narrative being pushed is dangerously accurate in many details, as the Frankfurt School really did want to end Western civilization and is almost wholly comprised of Jews. This allows anti-Semites to recruit new anti-Semites who wouldn't have otherwise been recruited. So let me just describe something to you guys. I've talked often, way back in the day when Jordan B. Peterson used to pop off about cultural Marxism and how so many Republicans regularly talk about cultural Marxism. Well, that cultural Marxism concept was, much like the rest of reactionary agitprop, an old school propaganda that Nazis also used. They called it cultural Bolshevism. It's the same shit. They just literally hid the Judeo-Bolshevism or cultural Bolshevism fucking word and said, oh, it's just cultural Marxism. It's just a new coat of paint. But when you immediately go back to the Frankfurt School and their interest in ending Western civilization, you are literally saying the exact same thing that the Nazis said, straight up. Interpretation of the Frankfurt School as a conspiracy. The conspiracy theory claims that an elite of Marxist theorists and Frankfurt School intellectuals are subverting Western society. While parts of the conspiracy theory make reference to actual thinkers and ideas selected from Western Marxist tradition, they severely misrepresent the subject and give an exaggerated interpretation of the effective influence. In reality, a group of German Marxist scholars, the majority of whom were Jewish, founded the Institute for Social Research in Frankfurt in 1923, which came to be known as the Frankfurt School. In their research, they sought to explain the failure of the German Revolution of 1918 and 1919, why capitalism remained the economic system in Germany, and eventually why German workers turned to Nazism instead. After 1933, the majority of the Frankfurt School intellectuals relocated to the United States, where their theories had a limited impact on left-wing circles. While the influence of the Frankfurt School in critical theory are generally viewed by most political scientists to have had a considerable range within academia, they were directly in opposition to the theories promoted by postmodern philosophers who are frequently identified by proponents of the conspiracy theory as leading examples of cultural Marxism. In addition, none of its members were in any kind of international conspiracy to destroy Western civilization. Because when you want to destroy Western civilization, why the fuck would you move to America? Well, I guess that's why I moved to America, to destroy Western civilization from within. What a lot of these people fail to, when they promote these conspiracies like these Jews wanted to destroy Western civilization, when they say stuff like that, they fail to recognize that a lot of those dudes loved Western civilization. Like me. I love Western civilization. I live in America, motherfucker. Why? I didn't have to live here. I chose to live here. There's a lot of promise here. There's a lot of good that could be done. Advocating to do such things does not mean you want to destroy Western civilization. Marcuse more or less openly advocates for using black ghetto population to achieve his goals through a white leftist student intelligentsia that doesn't share its values, justice, resentment. Read that again. Using them to break society for people like himself, CRT. In the black ghetto population, Marcuse sees an opportunity for educated white middle-class leftist malcontents to tear apart society and make way for socialism, reimagined as liberationism, and just presumes that such actions are good for black people who resent things. Imagine looking at this and then not realizing that there's an understandable anger within a population of people who at the time were literally in even more dire conditions that they were subjected to, straight up. And that there is an understandable energy that you can capture for emancipation in people who were relegated to ghettos, not specifically black people. But when we talk about America, it is usually that's what comes to mind. For some weird reason, these fucking weirdos, they personally think that there is no reason why people could genuinely hold these perspectives. Emancipation is completely just completely beyond Conceptual James's conceptualization skills. Okay, he cannot see a world in which people could genuinely want for others to also have a taste of that same liberation that they take for granted. Just that's not a thing. It can't happen. It has to be for some other nefarious purpose, and that nefarious purpose has to be the destruction of Western civilization. Why? Why would that have to be the case? Direct quotes from Mein Kampf, scapegoating cultural Bolsheviks, taking from the 3 Arrow videos on it. Oh yeah, hold on. The doctrine of Marxism repudiates the aristocratic principle of nature and substitutes it for the eternal privilege of force and energy. Remember, the naturally occurring phenomena of hierarchies can be experienced even within lobster populations. And cultural Marxists want to take away such naturally occurring phenomena. Well, it's deeply unnatural. For the eternal privilege of force and energy, numerical mass, and its dead weight. Thus, it denies the individual worth of the human personality. impugns the teaching that nationhood and race have a primary significance, and by doing this, it takes away the very foundations of human existence and human civilization. If the Marxist teaching were to be accepted as the foundation of life of the universe, it would lead to the disappearance of all order that is conceivable to the human kind, and thus the adoption of such a law would provoke chaos in the structure of the greatest organism that we know, with the result that the inhabitants of this earthly planet would finally disappear. The order in this conversation that not so great writer, failed painter twice over, Adolf Hitler is talking about is, of course, white supremacy. The folkish order, the natural order, where the folkish Germans are supposed to dominate over everyone else. That's the order that he's talking about. If Hitler was doing push-ups in prison instead of writing nerd shit, he would have gotten bitches instead of getting beat the fuck out by Soviets. It's true. Damn, you never realized how much JBP sounds like Hitler? Yeah, you didn't, but he does. Actually, Three Arrows has done a great video on this. Me and Three Arrows actually teamed up to dissect some of this propaganda in the past as well, specifically talking about the Frankfurt School conspiracy and other things that Republicans take for granted regularly. Like, they just repeat Nazi propaganda because they know they can always go back to, oh, he just called everyone a Nazi. That's it. Just like whenever you fucking talk about transphobic people and you mention that they are being transphobic when they hold on to certain ideas, they can immediately be like, no, I'm not transphobic. Fuck you. You're the idiot. You're stupid. You just call everyone transphobic. And it relies on the majority also holding on to opinions like that. And therefore, they can say whatever the fuck they want with their entire chest as long as they hide certain elements of their attitude. Certain points of view that they have that the Norman would also consider to be transphobic. We're going to show the second image in that album. Oh, the Jewish doctrine of Marxism repudiates the aristocratic principle. Boom. That's the difference. Why was Jewish highlighted, lol? Oh, in order to show how Jordan Peterson and others in this day and age still straight up carbon copy Nazi Frankfurt School theories and just basically substitute like the Jewish doctrine of Marxism to, just cultural Marxism. In order to show that, he hid that originally and then basically showed the actual, writing in Mein Kampf. Rufo, like Lindsay, is now incorporating the idea that the Jewish Frankfurt School engineered CRT to promote division between white and black Americans so that they could overthrow the white rule and install a communist government. This is literal neo-Nazism, plain as day. Soon after, Republican members of Congress had adopted this mythical origin story of CRT and regurgitated it confidently to scholars who knew much better than them, such as Mark Lamont Hill. By the way, if you haven't, you need to see this is among my favorite intellectual defenestrations of all time. Yeah, this was awesome. Mark Lamont Hill fucking absolutely eviscerates Conceptual James here. Lots of these in his feed. He's so bad at this. They're not just going to let it collapse around them, folks. They'll have a contingency plan. But yeah, no, this part is awesome because like you have gotten to a point where you're just completely lost in the sauce when you're like, oh, the usage of the word folks actually is like is the same as like the Germans using folk. Even the folk part is wrong. Germany still use Volk for all people living in Germany. Yeah, because it just means people. That's what it means. It means people, guys. Volkswagen. The people's wagon. Das Autokussi. That's what it means, yeah. Okay, the word "the" is actually incredibly racist if you consider blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's just fucking unhinged ramblings I wanted to point to.